Peace and blessings, everyone. I'm your host, Sean Crystal Parker, and welcome to episode 7 of Real Shift Happens. Thank you so much for joining me. And this week we have a brand new guided meditation that we're going to use for a couple weeks here, a few weeks. And our S&B discussion topic this week is the love frequency. So how do we shift ourselves into the frequency of love? And we're not talking about being in love with someone. We're talking about living through the love frequency. Well, we'll get into that. But first, we'll get into our 5-minute focus shift right now. I will now begin the meditation. Sit in a comfortable position and close your eyes. For just this moment, let go of your thoughts in the outside world. Focus your attention on your heart center. Place both hands on your heart and be aware of your heart as a space. The heart center is a point of awareness where feelings enter. In its essence, the heart is pure emptiness, pervaded by peace and subtle light. This light may appear as white, gold, pale pink, or blue. And we're coming back, opening the eyes. Welcome back, everyone. Wow, that was a really powerful heart meditation from Deepak Chopra. And I'm going to go ahead and read the afterthoughts written by Deepak Chopra for this heart meditation. So, the heart message is perfect. Whether it speaks to you in sadness or fear, delight or pleasure, its message is exactly what you need. If voices of anger, worry, or doubt start to arise, allow them to speak and then let them go, easily and comfortably. You are learning to be with your heart in order to heed its spiritual meaning. This is meditation. You are letting repressed material come up to be released. This is purification. You are listening to your heart without judgment. This is attention. As you practice this meditation, spending a few minutes each day to connect with your heart center, you will begin to get glimpses of your heart as it really is: silence, peace, and a warm glow or subtle light. Even if these glimpses are fleeting, you will find that your life outside of meditation is starting to change. At unexpected moments, you will feel a wave of joy and well-being sweep over you. You will begin to walk with more buoyancy in your step. These are signs that the constriction most people hold around the heart center is releasing its grip and letting go of the fear and tightness that keeps spirit from entering. In truth, spirit doesn't enter since it's always there. but making contact with it is like being penetrated with light and insight. This is the flow of love. Wow, what powerful afterthoughts. I mean, just, and it actually really fits in with our S&B discussion topic, the love frequency. So last week we were talking about the shadow self and how important it is to integrate and really accept and love the dark side of ourselves. So that's, part of, loving yourself. But something that happened personally to me, another kind of like synchronicity, which was kind of, I guess they're not really weird anymore, but as I was putting together this episode, I have an episode list that I created before I started the podcast, but I'm finding that I'm not really sticking to the episode guide because for whatever reason, the topic that I may have put for that episode, so far I just maybe haven't really been feeling it fully. So I'm not forcing myself to stay within the topics I kind of planned. I'm kind of just actually looking for topics each week that speak to me personally and that I can relate to. So for the whole week, I've been trying to figure out, what my topic was going to be this week. And finally came after like searching, different things and listening to different lectures, just searching for different topics, I finally came to the conclusion of self-love. That was going to be my topic, right, for this week. So I start researching and I come across a YouTube video by this YouTuber named Aaron Doty, or is it Doty, I guess. And he was, if you have a chance, actually check out his channel on YouTube. It's Aaron Doty, and it's Doughty, 2 A's, Aaron. And he has a really good page, or channel. And he was discussing self-love. I found a video from him on self-love. And he had this image of this chart showing kind of like the levels of human emotion with a number system assigned to each emotion. And, we'll go over the chart a little later, but I knew I'd seen that chart before. And even recently, I looked at it somewhere on Instagram, I think. But also I remember that I posted it on one of my boards on Pinterest. So, I'm Pinterest, big Pinterest fan. Also the recipes. But, so I open my Pinterest and I go looking for that chart, and I find the post that I posted before a while back, and I'm looking for the author of the chart and wondering like, where did that chart come from? So I start to look a little more through Pinterest, and I find a pin that shows that chart, and the chart's called The Map of Consciousness by David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. And so I'm like, who is David R. Hawkins? So I do a Google search on Hawkins to see what books he's written. And as my results are starting to come up, in that split second, I see a flash of one book. And I think to myself like, I think I have that book. So the page loads fully and I'm looking for that book, and I can't even find it on that page. So I'm, kind of like scrolling the book results on Google, and I can't seem to find that book. So I actually kind of like, search around the page or or whatever. And the title of that book is on an ad, actually, a Google ad. So, and it's kind of like down below on the page. So, I see the book is called Power versus Force by David Hawkins. And I'm like, oh, wow, I think I have that book. So I go to my bookcase, and sure enough, that book is literally sitting right front and center on my top shelf. And I've never read this book before. And I only recently taken it out of my storage where it lived for about 8 years, maybe 7. Yeah, I had a storage for a long time. And I don't even remember where I bought it. So the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins was published first in 1995, and then it was republished again a couple times. And he was an internationally renowned author, spiritual teacher, psychiatrist, researcher, lecturer, along with the developer of the map of consciousness, which was developed over a 25-year study through the use of kinesiology or muscle testing. David Hawkins did pass away, though, in 2012 at the age of 85. And there are a lot of his lectures on YouTube. And so I would definitely suggest looking him up. If you're interested in more details on the testing methods that he used, definitely pick up that book, Power versus Force. And he goes into more detail about how he created the testing, or what kind of testing he used to create this scale. So he breaks it down to 17 levels of consciousness. And like I said, it's based on kinesiology testing. And the scale of consciousness represents logarithmic calibrations from the lowest 0-point energy field to the highest at 1,000 points. The first level is 1 through 20, and that is shame. And for example, on some of the charts online, they will show the level of consciousness, like I said, like shame. And then for this one, the God view is despising. The life view is miserable. The scale, as I said, is from 1 to 20. The emotion is humiliation, and the process is elimination. So someone who lives in this level of consciousness, which is the lowest, has low self-esteem and may even be paranoid. They probably feel worthless and suicidal, and staying at this level for long periods may lead to elimination of oneself or others. So that's kind of an example of the outcomes from this map of consciousness. And I'm not going to go over in depth each one, but I will read the chart so you kind of have an idea of how these outcomes work. So let's go over. Okay, so like I said, that was shame. The next one up on the scale is 30, and that's guilt. And the God view of guilt is vindictive. The life view is evil. The emotion is blame, and the process is destruction. Next, going up the scale is 50, and that's apathy. So the God view of apathy is condemning. The life view is hopeless. The emotion is despair, and the process is abdication. Next, going up is 75 on the scale, which is grief. The God view is disdainful. The life view is tragic. The emotion is regret, and the process is despondency. Going up one more level is 100, and that's fear. That's the level of fear. On this level, the God view is punitive. The life view is frightening. The emotion is anxiety, and the process is withdrawal. The next scale up is 125, and that's desire. And with desire, we have the God view denying, the life view disappointing, the emotion craving, and the process enslavement. Next up is 150, which is anger. In anger, we have a God view of vengeful, a life view of antagonistic, an emotion of hate, a process of aggression. And so from the 20s, or maybe even the 0 to up to 175, 150, that is considered force. All of those emotions and those levels of consciousness are weak levels, and they are considered using force. And we can see a lot of examples of that, but let me just keep going. So next up in the scale is 175, and that's pride. And the God view is indifferent. The life view is demanding. The emotion is scorn. The process is inflation. Next up is 200. And the level of that is courage. And this is the neutral level. So this is a critical point at 200. We'll talk about that. But the God view is permitting. The life view is feasible. The emotion is affirmation. And the process is empowerment. So next up, we have 250 on the scale. And now we're moving into the power, into strength. And on that level of 250, we have neutrality. The God view is enabling. The life view is satisfactory. The emotion is trust, and the process is release. Next, 310, which is willingness on the level of consciousness. We have the God view inspiring, life view hopeful, emotion optimism, process intention. Next, 350, and that's acceptance. And from here we have the God view merciful, the life view harmonious, emotion forgiveness, process transcendence. And next up we have 400. This is the level of reason. The God view is wise, the life view is meaningful, the emotion is understanding, the process is abstraction. Next is 500, and that is the level of love, the love frequency. The God view is loving, the life view is benign, the emotion is reverence, and the process is revelation. So up from there, we have 540, and that's joy. So the God view of joy is one or oneness. Life view is complete. Emotion is serenity, and process is transfiguration. Next is 600, and this is the level of peace. From this level, our God view would be all being. The life view is perfect. The emotion is bliss. The process is illumination. And after that is the last level, which is 700 to 1,000. And that's the level of enlightenment. Of course, we know that like people like Buddha, Jesus, these figures, spiritual figures in history are people who have reached this level. And the God view is self. The life view is the emotion ineffable, and the process pure consciousness. So you can see that the lower levels of shame at 0 to pride at 175 describes a destructive force which actually makes the body weaker. So, if we have emotions of hate, anxiety, despair, fear, all of these things, grief, extreme shame and guilt and apathy, these actually make the body weaker. And, a lot of times people, commit suicide or do contract some type of disease or, manifest a disease within them. So from the levels of courage at 200 to enlightenment at 700 to 1,000, one is using constructive power and the body grows stronger. And at the level of courage, 200, is the critical separation point between power and force. When one is no longer using destructive forces, but starts to create change through constructive power. So the difference between force and power is stronger. Force is weaker. This is the point where people start to awaken at that 200 mark and start to come, out of that slumber and like what's happening now with this great awakening. Hawkins says that about 85% of the human race calibrates below the critical level of courage at 200, with an overall level of human consciousness being at 207. So that's pretty low for an overall, only 4% of the world's population calibrate at an energy level of 500 and above. And he says only 0.4% reach joy at 540. And only 1 in 10 million calibrate at peace at 600 or above. He puts people like Mother Teresa, Gandhi, people like that in the energy field of the 500 and 540s. So our focus is on the energy level of love, though, at 500. And just as 200 is a critical point in consciousness, 500 is also this critical point where awareness will make a giant leap. He makes the point that the general definition in our society of love is conditional, possessive, codependent, and all of this type of so-called love can easily turn into hate. So it's conditional. So the opposite of hate is what we think is love, but really it's pride. Therefore, if your so-called love turns into hate, was it really love or was it just pride? In this case, we're speaking of true unconditional love, agape love. And we're not talking about having that unconditional love just for someone else, like say your kid. We're talking about when one is living their lives through the love frequency. So they're vibrating through the heart center with deep compassion and empathy for everything and everyone, including themselves. So when you have that complete and unconditional love for yourself and others, including, let's say, flies, ants, reverence for nature, all of these things, at this level, there's a major shift in paradigm. And your intuition is strong and, you're guided by this constructive power that's stronger than yourself. And many people call that God. And, whatever your word for it is, it can be the universe or whatever. There's a stronger force, a constructive power. It's not a force. It's a constructive power that is guiding one within this 500 level of love. And we always say God is love, right? So in this 500 level, well, love is a state of being. It's a state of being. It's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. It's actually being in this state of love, unconditional, unchanging, and permanent. This is actually the true foundation, or this is the truth about who we are actually. We are unconditional love at the core of who we are. And that is unconditional, unchanging, and permanent. So when we can tap into that deep, deep core of ourselves, that's when the true spirituality begins, and the awakening to, one's true purpose and what we're here for on this earth. Hawkins notes that one person at the 500 love level can counterbalance 750,000 people below the 200 levels. So it's major. It's a major, major shift. And what he says is that the average person doesn't usually jump even one full level in a lifetime, that it's more like maybe 5 basis points that one can progress in their lifetime within that chart. And just one level increase can be a radical change in a person's life. So I think that what's happening now through this awakening period is that people may be suddenly shifting into that 200 courage level, and then moving up that scale pretty rapidly within this life. Hawkins kind of says that isn't ordinary, but it seems to be that this shift is causing this shift in consciousness, and throughout the whole world is causing people to move up the scale more rapidly. And he also suggests that studying the map itself will help initiate the drive inside to move up that scale. And also just reading the book, Power versus Force, he says will increase your awareness by 35 basis points. So I guess for someone who's never heard of anything like this before, and they read this book, that could be a major shift in their consciousness. So I can see how that would happen. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about raising our level of consciousness. And as a whole, he says the U.S. is calibrated at 420, which is within the level of reason, and it's pretty high as far as for a full collective people. And that means really is that we in the United States, I guess, kind of live in our minds. We're able to create what we want. We're able to, see our thoughts and manifest it into the real world. But within that 400 range, we're still in our mind, right? So to reach that next critical level of love at 500, we have to operate out of our heart center and not the mind. And that's the major paradigm shift. And that's the shift that's going to change the world, really, is when we start really, really operating out of the heart, because the heart is really the center. It's the center of us as humans. We used to think it was the mind, but now we know it's the heart. And it's not so much about expressing that love, although that should be done, expressing love, but it's about being unconditional love, about actually living in a space of unconditional love. And in the 400s, though it is a powerful expressions and manifestations come out of that, they still do so in a linear format. So A plus B equals C. It's always, you have to do this, and then you get this, right? That's how the mind operates, because it's all linear. But when we operate out of the 500s, out of the love consciousness, the linear disappears, and now we have non-linear manifestations. And this is kind of what we may consider miracles, because we don't have to rely on the A plus B equals C equation. We now can rely on the field of all possibilities that exist, and that any possibility can manifest in the formless in an instant. So we don't have to have A, B, or C to make something happen, to make change happen, to make manifestations happen in our life when we live in this love frequency. It's, of course, easier said than done, right? It would be great if we all could live in that frequency all the time, but something somewhere is going to piss you off. But remember, one individual at that 500 love level counterbalances 750,000 people below the 200 level. That's crazy. So, what I take from this is the key is that living in the love frequency is the full and complete unconditional love for, not only all of what's out there, but mostly for oneself, because that's what's lacking. We have a major lacking of love for ourselves. This means being aware of all of our shadow sides, the bad sides, the good sides, and still loving ourselves completely. Loving, whatever it is that you don't like about yourself, though, whatever it is. Loving every single part of yourself conditionally. Loving kindness to oneself and raising our own awareness is the first step to get to those levels of high love consciousness, to get to that 500 love frequency. Hawkins says, to become more conscious is the greatest gift anyone can give to the world. Moreover, in a ripple effect, the gift comes back to its source. And that's really a great quote. So we just have to do the work. We have to create a shift in our own consciousness. I think I said this last week, which will create a shift in the collective consciousness. That's the goal, right? That's the goal. Well, this is a long one. That's my time. Don't forget, you can support our podcast at Anchor FM /Real Shift Happens, anchor.fm /Real Shift Happens. And please subscribe on any of your favorite podcast platforms. You can also drop us a message through the anchor.fm app by searching us up. We're Real Shift Happens Wellness Podcast, and tap the voice message. Leave us a message. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts. And until then, real shifters, go within and make real shift happen. Peace.